Philip of Avalon. Far beyond the known seas, beyond the mountains shrouded in mist, and even beyond the stars that people in the night sky considered unreachable, there was a planet called Avalon, home to a strange and highly advanced species called the Avali. One of them was a young Avali boy named Philip. At first glance, he did not seem to be anything special. He traveled from city to city, from kingdom to kingdom, selling rare goods, collecting stories, and learning about new cultures. He loved adventure much more than wealth. He wore a light traveling cloak, a bag full of strange objects on his back, and an eternal smile on his face. No one knew where he really came from. One day, he arrived in the kingdom of Ardelia, where a large summer market was taking place. The square was full of people, musicians, and merchants. It was there that he first met Princess Eliza. The princess moved among the people in a simple disguise so that she could get to know the life of ordinary people. Philip did not recognize her immediately. "How much is that blue crystal worth?" she asked. "For you." Philip smiled. One smile. Eliska laughed. "It is a special currency, the rarest of all." From that moment on, they spent the whole afternoon together. They talked about distant lands, legends, and dreams. Philip told of flying islands, forests glowing in the dark, and cities hidden among the stars. Eliska had never met anyone like her, and Philip had never met a person who was so kind and curious. Over the next few months, they met more and more often. But one day the truth came out. Philip discovered that the girl he had fallen in love with was a princess, and Eliska discovered that her boyfriend was not human. When she saw his true form, she was surprised, but not frightened. "So you are Avali?" "Yes." "And were you afraid I would run away?" "A little." Eliska smiled. "Then you don't know me at all." Their feelings grew stronger, but at the same time, obstacles grew. The king rejected the idea that his daughter could get close to a foreigner of unknown origin. The nobles spread rumors, and some people were afraid of Avali. Finally, Philip decided that it would be better to leave. The night before they left, they stood together on the castle walls. "I wish it could be different," Eliska whispered. "I know. Will you come back?" Philip looked at the stars for a long time. "Someday, for sure." Then he disappeared. 2 years passed. The kingdom of Ardelia was facing a threat. A vast army was approaching from the east, and it seemed that the defenses would not hold. Just when the situation was at its worst, the sky lit up. Huge silver ships appeared above the capital. They were not airships. They were not dragons. It was something that people had never seen before. Thousands of Avali descended from the ships in shiny uniforms, and at the head of the entire fleet stood Philip. But he no longer looked like an ordinary merchant. He wore a cloak decorated with silver symbols and was surrounded by a personal guard. The king looked at him in disbelief. "Who are you?" Philip was silent for a moment. "My name is Philip of Avalon." Then he added, "Emperor of the Avalon Star Empire." There was complete silence. It turned out that Philip had been hiding his true identity all along. He was no ordinary traveler. He was the ruler of the planet Avalon and dozens of star systems. He had once fled court life to see the world with his own eyes. He wanted to understand ordinary people, not rule from the throne. And that was when he met Eliska. Within hours, the advanced technology of the Avalians stopped the enemy army without a single unnecessary victim. For the first time, people saw the power of the Avalian civilization. Cities in space, medical technology capable of curing almost all diseases, artificial intelligence thousands of years old, ships traveling between the stars, and scientific knowledge exceeding everything humanity knew. The Avalians were thousands of years ahead. Yet Philip never considered humans inferior. He believed that every civilization had its own value. After the victory, Philip and Eliska met again. This time there were no more lies between them. But there was still a problem. He was the emperor of the Star Empire. She was the princess of the human kingdom. Their duties kept them far apart. "I could go with you," Eliska said. Philip shook his head. "And leave your people? You would never do that. And you would not leave yours." No. They both knew it was true. And so they promised each other something else. They would not rule one world together. They would unite two worlds. A few years later, the first alliance between humans and Avali was formed. Ardelia became the first human kingdom to establish contact with the Star Empire of Avalon. And although Philip and Eliska could never live an ordinary life side by side, their love changed history. Thanks to them, a path between the stars was opened. And every time the Silver glow of Avalon's ships appeared in the night sky. Eliska knew that somewhere among the stars, a traveler, a merchant, and an emperor named Philip was thinking of her. Several months had passed since the alliance between Ardelia and Avalon had been forged. Philip sat in his study on the flagship Starry Dawn, scanning the reports from the various worlds of his empire. Although he ruled thousands of planets and billions of inhabitants, his thoughts often returned to one person, Princess Eliska. The door opened quietly. His aide, Arvin, entered, an old and wise Avali who had served Philip for many years. My emperor, Arvin, Philip smiled. What is the matter? The aide bowed. I may have found a solution to your problem. Philip raised his head. What problem? Arvin smiled slightly. That you and Princess Eliska cannot be together. The room fell silent. I'm listening. Arvin placed several holographic maps on the table. The Avalon Council and our diplomats have analyzed the situation. There is a way to maintain your duties and its obligations to Ardelia. And what is it? A permanent truce and a treaty of friendship between humans and the Avali must be concluded. The Kingdom of Ardelia must officially accept the Avali as an allied species and allow joint settlement. Philip thought for a moment. That would be possible. Arvin nodded. But that's not all. A green valley lit up on the map, several dozen kilometers from the capital's borders. We could build a new kingdom in this area. A kingdom, a smaller independent territory under the joint administration of Ardelia and Avalon. A place where humans and Avali could live together, and where you and the princess could reside. Philip could not believe his ears for a moment. You are proposing to build a whole new kingdom? Yes, my emperor. Just for me. Arvin shook his head. Not just for you. It would be a symbol of friendship between our peoples, but it would also allow you to be with the person you love. For the first time in a long time, Philip actually smiled. A few weeks later, an Avalon delegation arrived in Ardelia. The king, the nobility, and Princess Eliska gathered in the great hall. Arvin stepped before the throne. We come with a proposal. A long discussion ensued. Some nobles protested. Others feared the Avali's influence would be too great. But when the people saw the Avali helping to build hospitals, schools, and protect the kingdom's borders, they began to trust them. Finally, the day of decision arrived. The king rose from his throne. Ardelia accepts the Avali as allies and friends. Applause erupted in the hall. Eliska looked at Philip, tears of joy glistening in her eyes. The following year, the construction of a new kingdom began. It was called Aurora. It was neither human nor Avali. It was both at once. Small light-carrying ships floated over the stone streets. Elegant buildings created with Avalon technology stood next to medieval gardens. Children of humans and Avali played together in the squares. It was the first place of its kind in history. When all was complete, Arvin stood before Philip again. My emperor, yes, the kingdom of Aurora is ready. And who will rule it? The aide smiled. You know that. Just then the door opened. Eliska entered. I think the two of us could do it. Philip laughed. After all the obstacles, the secrets, and the years of separation, the moment finally came when they didn't have to choose between love and duty. They could have both. And so Philip, Emperor of Avalon, and Eliska, Princess of Ardelia, became joint rulers of the new kingdom of Aurora, a bridge between the human world and the starry realm of Avali. And their story was far from over. A new chapter was just beginning, in which they would lead two nations together into a future among the stars. Aurora flourished. Humans and Avali lived side by side in peace. Both human products and Avalon technology were sold in the marketplaces. Children of both species attended the same schools and learned about their cultures. Philip and Eliska were happier than ever. But one evening, a red symbol flashed on the Imperial Communications desk, the highest level of emergency. Philip immediately became serious. This is not good. Eliska looked at him. What is happening? Philip opened the hologram. The face of Grand Admiral Kale appeared. My emperor, we have a problem. Speak. Wrecks of scout ships have been found on the borders of the Avalon Empire. Pirates? No. Kale shook his head. The crews have disappeared. Without a trace. The room fell silent. Avali technology could track almost anything. Something that could make entire crews disappear without a trace was very dangerous. 2 days later, Philip set out on his flagship to investigate the situation. Eliska insisted that she fly with him. If Aurora is part of Avalon, then that's my problem too. Philip smiled. Okay, but you stay close to me. After several hours of flying, they arrived in a deserted sector. There they found shipwrecks. They were split in half, as if something had cut them open with a single blow. Not a single sign of struggle. Not a single shot. Suddenly, alarms went off. Unknown object, the officer shouted. A huge shadow appeared on the screen. A ship, but much larger than anything the Avali had ever built. Even larger than the Imperial flagship. That's not possible, Kale whispered. Philip frowned. It's possible. I just hoped I'd never see them again. Eliska looked at him in surprise. You know who they are? Philip nodded slowly. Yes. Who? Our ancestors. The entire bridge fell silent. Ancestors. Eliska repeated. Philip sighed. What people know as Avali is not the original form of our people. What do you mean? Thousands of years ago, there was a much more powerful civilization, so advanced that they could reshape stars. And what happened? They split. Ancient history appeared on the hologram. One part wanted to protect life. The other wanted to dominate the entire universe. Eventually, war broke out. The peace-loving Avali won and banished the other faction into the darkness between the galaxies. Everyone thought they were long dead, but they weren't. Then an unknown signal appeared on the screen. A figure sat on a dark throne. It was similar to Avali, but it had silver-black feathers and glowing red eyes. Greetings, Philip. Philip's expression hardened. So you survived. The stranger smiled. Of course. Who is it? Eliska asked. Philip answered with a single sentence. My older brother. The entire bridge fell silent in shock. Brother? His name is Archon. Archon smiled. And I have come to take Avalon back. Far beyond the ships, hundreds of other vessels began to appear. Then thousands. The entire Dark Fleet. Philip realized that the greatest war in Avalon's history was about to begin. And this time it wasn't just about his empire. It was about Aurora, about Eliska, and the entire known universe. The bridge of the flagship was completely silent. On the main screen, Archon sat on a dark throne, and thousands of warships spread out behind him. Eliska could not believe her ears. Your brother? You never mentioned him. Philip was silent for a moment. Because I hoped he was dead. Archon laughed. That's a cruel welcome from a younger brother. After what you've done, you deserve nothing else. Archon's red eyes narrowed. I did it. You betrayed our future. The transmission was abruptly cut off. A few seconds later, alarms sounded. The enemy fleet is approaching. The largest army in Avalon's history had gathered in orbit around an uninhabited moon. Battleships hundreds of kilometers long. Thousands of cruisers. Millions of fighters. Philip stood by the panoramic window. Next to him was Eliska. Are you afraid? He asked her. She smiled. Of course. Me too. You? The Emperor of Avalon. Every commander is afraid. The difference is what he does next. Eliska squeezed his hand. Then show him why your people follow you. The battle began. The entire universe was filled with flashes of energy. Avalon's blue beams clashed with the red discharges of Archon's fleet. The stars themselves seemed to tremble. Although the Avali possessed incredible technology, Archon's forces were just as advanced. Because they came from the same nation. After several hours of fighting, the Imperial fleet began to have problems. We are losing our defense line. The third sector has fallen. The enemy is heading for Aurora. Philip clenched his fists. He couldn't let this happen. Then something unexpected happened. New signals appeared on the screen. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Tens of thousands. Grand Admiral Kale blinked in surprise. Who is this? The operators quickly analyzed the data. And then a familiar flag appeared on the screen. The flag of Aurora. That's impossible, Philip gasped. A huge fleet had just arrived in the system. It wasn't just Avali. Not just humans. There were ships from dozens of nations. Civilizations Avalon had helped in the past. Allies from many star systems. Elisha's flagship led the fleet. The princess smiled. While you organized an army, I organized friends. Philip laughed. Remind me never to underestimate you. The combined forces pushed Archon's army back. In the end, only 2 ships remained on the battlefield. Philip's and Archon's, brothers against each other. Just like their ancestors had thousands of years ago, Archon opened a communication channel. It's not too late, Philip. For what? Join me. Never. We could rule the galaxy. Philip shook his head. I don't want to rule the galaxy. So what do you want? Philip looked at Aliska. Then he replied, a future where no one has to rule through fear. Archon's expression hardened. Then you will die. He lowered his weapon. But at that moment, something much larger than any ship appeared above the battlefield. An ancient structure hidden inside a moon. Ancient technology of the first Avali. A system that had been asleep for 10,000 years. And it was just waking up. A single message appeared on all the screens. Heirs found. Judgment beginning. Philip turned pale. Archon did too. Because they both knew what it meant. The legend was true. And the power that once created all of Avalon has just awakened. A dazzling light swept across the universe. A vast ancient station, hidden for millennia inside the moon, awoke. The fleets of both sides ceased fire. No one dared to move a single ship. The glowing words reappeared on all the screens. Heirs found. Assessment in progress. Archon smiled. Finally, Philip was silent. He knew well what this technology represented. It had been created by the first Avali themselves, the founders of their entire civilization. According to legend, it could decide who was the true ruler of Avalon. Suddenly, a being of light appeared before the two brothers. It was not human. It was not Avali either. It was an artificial intelligence 10,000 years old. Its voice sounded like an echo of the stars. Archon. Philip, present your reasons. Archon stepped forward. I am the most powerful heir. I can unite the galaxy under one rule. No one will oppose. No one will threaten Avalon. The being listened silently. Then she turned to Philip. And you? Philip thought for a moment. I do not want to rule by fear. That is not the answer. Then I want every world to have the opportunity to decide its own future. Even if it means you will not have complete power? Yes. Even if you have to give up some of your authority? Yes. Even if some hate you? Philip looked at Aliska. Yes. There was a long silence. Then the ancient being turned to both fleets. Decision completed. Archon smiled triumphantly. He was certain of his victory. He was stronger. He had a larger army. He was unyielding. But the next words froze him. Philip is the heir. The entire universe seemed to fall silent. Archon could not believe his ears. What? Decision confirmed. Why? The ancient intelligence replied. Because power has never been the highest value of the first. Memories of the ancient Avali began to play on the screens. Their cities, their worlds, their culture. The first Avali built their civilization on knowledge, cooperation, and the protection of life. Archon took a step back. No, you seek power. Then the being turned to Philip. You seek peace. The glow around the station grew stronger. You see value in those who are not like you. Images of humans, Avali, and other peoples living in Aurora appeared. You unite instead of divide. Tears welled up in Aliska's eyes. The ancient intelligence raised its hand. Therefore, Philip is the rightful heir to the legacy of the first Avali. The station sent out a beam of light. It hit Philip's ship. The signal spread throughout the galaxy. All the ancient systems of Avalon recognized him immediately. He was no longer just an emperor. He had become the bearer of the legacy of the founders. Archon bowed his head. For the first time in many years. Not by defeat in battle, but by defeat in one's own heart. So I've been fighting for the wrong cause all along. Philip reached out his hand. It's not too late. Archon looked up in surprise. After all this, you're offering me forgiveness? Philip smiled. If I hadn't, I'd be no better than you. After a long moment, Archon took his hand. The war was over. Without a final shot. Without the destruction of worlds. Without millions dead. Exactly as Philip would have wished. And somewhere deep in the ancient systems of Avalon, the final message from the first ones rang out. The future is safe. Peace has prevailed. And while festive fireworks lit up over Aurora, Philip and Aliska stood side by side on the balcony of their palace. This time they knew that no one would stop them from being together. Because sometimes the greatest force in the universe is not the army. Sometimes it has a good heart.